My name is Jerry Lee Meeuwenberg. I was born in Fremont, Michigan, May 14th, 1943.
And what was your early childhood like?
Uh, Kind of a small community atmosphere. Missed my dad for a while. He was in World War II. I remember my dad coming home from the service. I don't remember much about that. I just remember going to pick him up. And as far as my childhood, I was kind of thrown out there a little bit. My mother was an alcoholic. My dad drank too much. They were good people. They were responsible, but I was kind of on my own. Spent a lot of time downtown shoplifting and hanging out with the hoodlums of Fremont. And of course, I grew up. And then.
What was high school like?
High school, I was probably ended up 113 out of 115. And my dad says, "How do you fail general math, Jerry?" I said, "You don't buy a book." And I was so distraught over failing algebra that I still had to take another math class, so I didn't buy a book because I didn't care. And so, the following year I took algebra again, passed it. I was a class clown, a lot of joking around, a lot of not paying attention, and I had a lot of fun. Enjoyed high school.
Did you have any idea at that time what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I wanted to drink a lot of beer and chase a lot of girls and party. I figured I'd been basically in prison for 12 years of school, or however you go, 12, 13 years, and I had a little bit of freedom. I just wanted to have fun. My dad said to me one time, they didn't think I had too much to offer intellectually, so he says, get a job in a factory and get seniority. So that's what I did.
So what kind of factory were you working in?
I worked first of all, I worked at Gerber's for 5 years and made Gerber baby food. Then after that, I went to a machine shop for approximately 19 years and ended up leaving there for good reasons. And I was a truck driver for a while. I was a mailman, and I went on to form my own fencing company, and been a fence builder for around 30 years, working for myself, which worked really well.
Well, somewhere in that period of time, though, you must have been hearing about what was going on in Southeast Asia. Did you have a television? Did you read newspapers? Did you know what was going on in Vietnam? If we're talking about the 54, 55, that area, you're already 10, 13, maybe 13 years old?
Yeah, I was 14 in 57,
All right.
1957. We just heard advisors, they refer to that. It was Southeast Asia. They had a different name for it.
French Indochina.
French Indochina, and nobody knew anything about French Indochina. It wasn't really a big deal. We didn't think much about it until people started going there for real and getting drafted, and things, got bigger as they went along.
So when did it start to affect you?
Well, I went to Detroit when I was 18. You had to go down and take a physical for the draft. I didn't pass my physical. I had scoliosis, so I was exempt. And at almost 25, they sent me back down. I assumed they needed more bodies, and I passed my physical, and I was off and running.
So walk me through the process. You're 25 years old. You're called up a second time.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts?
Well, I thought that my dad was in the service. He was patriotic. You're supposed to be an American, patriotic to your country, and I wasn't second guessing the war at the time. I just believed I had to serve my country and go do it and come home and get it over with.
So you got drafted, and where did you have to report to? And you left. You're not living at home anymore, right? Because you're working.
I was still living at home.
Okay.
Yeah. At 24, I was still at home.
So walk us through the process.
Well, I got a notice again from my draft board, and they said I had to be at the draft board on a Saturday, and there was a bus picking up kids all the way from Ludington to Fremont, and I got on the bus, went to Detroit, had another physical, and passed my physical. I got sent to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and I was in basic training at that point.
Now, you're 25?
Yeah, I'm about 25 at the time, yeah.
What about the others that you were with?
Most of the kids were 18, 19 years old. They were already drunk and thrown up on the bus when they got to me. So,
So you arrive in Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
right?
yep.
And a very nice guy gets on the bus and tells you how wonderful it is, and he's gonna give you tea and crumpets, and you're gonna have a wonderful time there. Is that pretty much what happened?
Yeah, they act like they're pretty tough, but I was a little bit older, so this stuff didn't bother me. I was in good shape, so I wasn't intimidated. I was in excellent shape, and so I thought basic training was basically a joke. Now we had to learn a lot about the military and how the military works and rank and the rules and regulations and that type of thing.
You were in barracks?
Yes, we were. World War II barracks.
So what was the conversation like? I mean, you're obviously taking this pretty well, considering you're older, but what about the other people?
Well, everybody wondered where they were going to go next. People got orders to go all over the world. And I got my orders, and it said Fort Polk, Louisiana. And the day I drove in there, there's a big sign that said, "Home of the Combat Man Bound for Vietnam." Well, I kind of figured out where I was going to go then. But people just, back to basic training, people just didn't know where they were going to go or what they were going to do. Some people became clerks. Some people stayed and became permanent party. Some people, that was a armor area, so they stayed there, and they went to AIT, Advanced Individual Training, and they went into armor.
What did they determine you were supposed to do?
They determined I was going to go be in infantry. Somebody over there, makes those decisions for fill the allocations where they need people, I suppose.
But being that you were a little older, was there any consideration that you might advance in rank? Was there any, were you given responsibilities that were different than the 18 or 19?
No, not in infantry training. We had pretty much had our instructors, and everybody was kind of on the same level. So at that point, no, I didn't get any extra responsibilities.
What year was this now that you're being assigned to go to Vietnam?
That would have been November of '68.
So things are heated up.
I just missed
68.
the bad Tet Offensive of '68. That was first January, February of '68. So it was still bad.
You're going into the infantry.
I know.
Were you concerned at all that you're going?
I wasn't very happy about it because everybody has their own vision of what going to Vietnam is. I thought, my impression was they were going to drop you off in the jungle and you were going to start hand-to-hand combat and stabbing people and shooting people, and well, it's not like that. It doesn't work that way.
So were you concerned? Were you worried? Were you apprehensive? I mean, what were your thoughts?
My opinion of the war and how I was going to deal with it was I was going back home. You know, as a Christian, I believe the Lord was going to take care of that for me, and I'd be okay. So
Okay.
that was my perspective on it. Didn't like it.
So what was your first impression? Because keep in mind, remember, I grew up in Asia. And so I know there's a big difference between breathing air in Michigan and breathing air in
Oh,
Asia.
thank you.
So what was your first, you got off an airplane, I take it.
Yeah, I got off a C-130.
And what was your
Troop
first?
carrier. I think, man, this place stinks. Everywhere you go, it stinks. Might have to do with the climate, that part of the world. A lot of bad water, a lot of bad fish, just everything stinks. You can't get away from it.
and hot.
Very hot, exactly, very hot, yeah.
So once you arrived off the airplane, walk us through, where did you go? What were your first duties?
Well, I got off at Long Bend Airport, and a couple days later, we got on C-130 cargo troop carrier, and they flew me to the 25th Division, which is in Cu Chi. Cu Chi was a town, but it was also a support base. It was a huge support base. It's approximately 17 miles in circumference. They had hospitals. They had swimming pools. They had PXs, what are stores for people that don't understand that. It was all there.
So what were the first things you had to do?
Well, they put you at a replacement unit. And so you go to this replacement unit with a bunch of other new guys, and you wait for further orders on where you're going to go out there, whatever they're going to do with you. And while I was there, cut me off if this is too short, but I was in an EM club, which is a bar, and kind of waiting around, killing time, and the guy comes over to me and says, "I'm sitting with a guy that knows you." And I says, "Well, I hardly believe that. I'm from a town of about 5,000 people." And at that time, this guy is named Red Mayette, and he comes over to me, and he was a freshman in school, and I was a senior, and I knew the family. So we went outside and shot the breeze, and to make this a little bit shorter, I was with two other guys I was in training with, and this Red Mayette guy. And it was a time of racial tension back in the United States, and a bunch of African Americans came from out of the dark and kicked us and knocked us down and put the boots to us for absolutely no reason. And I was a little bit bitter or prejudiced even for a while, but I got over it, because eventually I had mostly black men working for me. We'll get to that, but my job down the road. So it all passed. And I understood that. Things were bad back in the United States, so.
Where were you staying? Were you also in barracks again, or did you have an apartment, or?
We were in a big facility, just a lot of barracks, a lot of bunk beds, and a lot of people, just hanging out waiting for your orders.
And then the orders came.
I got sent to 1st the 8th Artillery. I had no artillery training. I'd been trained infantry. I'd gone to Texas. I drove a tank for 3 or 4 months. I was a tank driver, and thought when I went to Vietnam I'd drive a tank or be in infantry. Well, they put me in artillery, which is kind of the military way of doing stuff. And because I didn't know anything about artillery, 105 howitzers, they put me in the ammo section. So now I'm working for the ammo section.
So you're still, I mean, this is, ammo section is what, practice?
No, the ammo section is, there's 6 guns in an artillery battery, and it's our responsibility to get guns, rounds to the guns when they're doing a fire mission. And so that's what I was with, like 6 guys in a section, and a lot of our fire missions were at night, and we would go to an ammo dump and fill up our deuce and a halfs, our 2.5 ton trucks with ammo, whatever the guns wanted, and unload them and go get more if we had to.
So you would set up, and then the orders would be just to shoot them off? You didn't really know where they were going? You were just...
Well, that wasn't my expertise. The guns, the 6 guns would get information from a computer center called FDC, which is Fire Direction Control. And they would give the azimuths, the directions, the computer settings to the guns, and then the guns would adjust. The shell casings had bags of gunpowder, and the computer center would tell them how many charges to put back in the canister, and put the shell back on the end of the canister, and then they'd put it in the gun and shoot it.
And you had no idea where those things are going?
I didn't, because I had a different job. You know, I was pretty much ignorant to the 105 howitzers. So,
So how long did this go on?
with artillery,
Yeah.
I was there for 9 months, and after about a month being there, we had a major battle, and my sergeant got hit in the foot, and so I was kind of next in line. I was a good soldier. I knew my job. They liked me. I was older, and so I got promoted really fast. I got promoted to E5 in about 2.5 months being there, which is pretty fast. And what happened in this conflict, you might want to know a little about that. We started one night. We started getting rockets and mortars, and I got a. I was leaning against this deuce-and-a-half, 2.5-ton truck, talking to a guy. The guy says to me, "You want to go have some coffee over at the mess tent?" I said, "Sure." And so I got about 30 steps away, and a 105, a 122 rocket landed in the back of this truck. And I was just leaning on the truck talking to this guy, and of course, then it all took off, and rockets and mortars went on for 3 days and 3 nights. And we never quit working for all that time. And we had a lot of guys wounded, dusted off, they call it. I think we had lost 2 or 3 kills. And you don't have time to sit around and feel bad about that, because you have so much to do, so much work. I've always said that the work was harder than the war for me, because when you're in artillery, you work really hard. You set up, you tear down, you set up, you move, you set up, you tear down. After this 3 days of this conflict we had to tear everything down and go a number of miles down the road and set up again. And you can't go to bed until you put 3 layers of sandbags over everything. So you're pretty tired. In fact, I thought I was going to have actually a physical breakdown. I had nothing left physically. So, but it was okay.
So the firefight, though, you said lasted for 3 intense days.
Mm-hmm.
So what about sleep? What about eating? What happened?
Well, I ate a couple of C rations. I don't know what the rest of the people did. Nobody slept. In fact, we wore out 2 guns, and we had to airlift a couple new guns in, and airlifting was my responsibility. They'd bring them in Chinooks, and I would bring them in with a strobe light at night, and I had a fear of they were going to blow this Chinook out of the air and land on me. So I said my prayers, but nothing happened. And we hooked this. The airlifting we used was called A22 bags and straps, nylon straps to hook and unhook stuff, resupply. This activity was mostly in Cambodia, and some people thought we might be in Cambodia, and we thought a lot of these Vietnamese were awful tall that might have been Chinese. And the body count from that activity was, they said 1,500 kills, and the military has a way of exaggerating numbers. Everybody wants to get promoted. Now that's a talk. I don't have the proof on that, but that was always a talk. So these people coming from Cambodia, a lot of them had some kind of a thong on their neck with handles. They were like suicide missions. And we heard that was so they could go to the happy hunting grounds. Your buddies would grab them and drag them back to their people. And the human wave attacks, some people have heard that, and we had a round in the 105 howitzers called a beehive round. It had a little plachette about that long. It was like an arrow, a dart, and there were 10,000 of them in a round. So that got a lot of people, knocked a lot of people out of commission. So anyway, that's about that's about it on that one.
And theoretically, we were not in Cambodia.
Well, that's what we kind of laughed about because we also, well, we're here. And I think that was what the politicians said is we weren't there. And we weren't fighting the Chinese, but there were a lot of tall Vietnamese. And the Chinese are traditionally taller than Vietnamese. So,
Yeah, as I told you, my father was with the United Nations at that time, and he knew what was going on, and yet
Oh,
the
sure.
newspapers, the Stars and Stripes, and of course what Nixon and others
Oh,
were saying
yeah.
was that, oh yeah, we're not in Cambodia.
we're not there. That's right.
So, the 3 days of intense fighting, no sleep, you then transferred somewhere else. You went somewhere
We
else.
packed up all our stuff and we moved to another area. And the other area was relatively quiet. I mean, we had almost weekly, we'd get rockets and mortars. Nothing during the day. It was always at night. So full moons were good. When the moon wasn't out, there was that cycle where it was black at night, and it was kind of scary, a lot scarier. But we always had infantry around our perimeter at night. They would come off whatever they did during the day and be on our perimeter. So we had some protection.
So there were around you then, I can visualize it, let's try to visualize it for the people watching and listening. So there were sandbags around this area, the guns were within the sandbag area.
Called a parapet.
Okay,
And there's about 4 feet of sandbag stacked to protect the guns and the people.
yeah. And then outside of that was where the infantry was protected.
They were outside the 6 guns. And some of the perimeters are bigger, you know, some of them were small. We'd actually gone on what they called a fireball. We'd go pack up everything and shoot for maybe 2 or 3 days for somebody on a special mission, and had a very small perimeter there. We didn't have a lot of people protecting us. And then we would tear down and go back to our base camp, our last base camp.
So this is what you said, about 8 months of this?
That was 9 months.
9 months?
Mm-hmm.
So then what happened after that?
I was out in the field, still out in the field. I got a letter, and it was from a Captain Peterson from 25th Division Headquarters Company. It's just the top of military echelon where I was from, and it said, Sergeant Meeuwenberg, me, report to Captain Peterson. And so I went to my captain, and I had to get permission to get on a convoy and go probably 15 miles back to Cu-Chi, this 25th Division headquarters. I did that. I found Captain Peterson's office. I went in, knocked on the door, and Rich Peterson's opened the door. Rich Peterson, the kid I grew up with, half a block from my house. He was a captain. He was an attorney. And he says, how'd you like to get out of the field? I'll pull some strings and I can get you to run one of these special service swimming pools back here. And so I says, that'd be great. I'm all for it. And so I went back out in the field and told my captain about it. And he says, well, I'm not going to let you go. We like your work. We like you. You do a good job. And I'm not going to release you. A couple days later, he came over to me. He says, Jerry, you know, you don't get too many breaks in the service, so I'm going to let you go. So I go back into base camp whenever I did. I don't remember, but got in touch with the people I had to get in touch with, and they gave me a swimming pool to take care of for 3 months. And so I pretty much got to wear civilian clothes and take care of a swimming pool.
Did you ever find out what happened to your original unit? I mean, did you follow up, or did you know when anything happened?
Yeah, they, shortly after I got the swimming pool job, they moved our whole unit back to base camp, back to 25th Division, Cu-Chi headquarters, on the outskirts. So they set up their guns. They were in a really a great spot. So, yeah, they did. They brought them back in. I don't know if that's where they ended up, but while I was at the pool, I got to go visit the guys that I worked with for 9 months. And they would come over to my pool and had a lot of fun.
By great spot, you mean that they were less?
Very safe,
Yes.
very safe, yeah. Like I said, Cucci was 17-mile perimeter. They had airstrips and all the big guns and all the big planes and B-52s and all this stuff, so it was very well protected.
Did you have, now that you're taking care of a swimming pool, you have a little bit more leisure time, I would imagine.
Yeah.
The Stars and Stripes, radio, was there TV? Did you know how the world was going? Did you have any idea?
We had radio. Radios never shut off in Vietnam. WRFVN was the radio station, and it went 24/7. Everybody, even at night, in the bunkers, all the radios kept going. I mean, you turned them down a little bit, but we knew what was going on. We were following things. And what we got a kick out of is they talked about the Paris peace talks, and we're going to be home for Christmas, and we're out there seeing what's going on, and we think, no, we're not going home for Christmas. This is political talk, so.
Music, radio.
A lot of dope music, a lot of pot smoking music, a lot of heavy music, especially after 7 o'clock at night. I mean, the radio station knew what was going on out there, and a lot of that was going out there. So, not everybody, but a lot of them. I tell people it made the war a lot more fun. So.
Did you see Good Morning Vietnam?
Yes, I did.
Did you?
I thought it was pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that actual disc jockey is for real. Do you remember actually hearing him, or was it just another disc jockey and you just didn't?
I don't know. I actually have tapes of it. I got reel-to-reel 3-inch tapes of that, WRFVN. And I don't know who the disc jockey was. I just know we listened to him every night.
So you're talking rock and roll and
Yeah, I think the Doors and a lot of the,
Creedence Clearwater.
yeah, a lot of the heavier music, not the traditional rock and roll I grew up with,
Yeah.
but Beatles, Sgt. Pepper, Magical Mystery Tour, that was a good music to smoke by.
Yeah.
And the number one song over there for all the GIs was "We Got to Get Out of This Place." You've probably heard that. Yeah, the Animals.
I was in high school, so I know exactly the kind of music you're talking about. And as a young kid in high school, you were over there, and I was safe in Taiwan. But at
Oh,
the same
sure.
time, I was thinking I may be, because nobody knew when the war was going to end, if it was going to end. So
Right,
it was that concern.
exactly.
Yeah. So you had R&R,
Yep.
and where did you go?
I always heard about Australia. Back way before I was in the service, everybody has said Australia's wonderful. They love Americans, and
Yanks.
especially the Australian girls. So there was no doubt where I was going to go. And I stayed downtown Sydney. I stayed at what's called the King's Cross. It was in a big hotel. It might have been 20, 30-story, big hotel. I have pictures of it here you might look at afterwards, and it's an overview of that opera theater right on the bay there. And I had a great view and had a great time in Sydney.
Yeah, my grandmother and my uncle and my aunt were there at that time.
This has been the end of, towards the end of '69,
Yeah.
October maybe.
Yeah, they arrived after the fall of China in 1949, so they ended up in China, and I was actually there, not when you were there, but. I
Oh,
know what you're
sure,
talking about. I know what you're
sure.
talking about. So, once you were taking care of the swimming pool, basically you're just running it, making sure that the chlorine, clean.
Exactly. I've got a housemaid, you might call it. I had a Papa San who kept everything clean and neat, and we had cut off jungle fatigues for swimming shorts, trunks, and the housemaid, you might say, washed those. And I took care of the chlorine. I had a generator-run swimming pool. Except towards the end, I got real electricity, and everything was more efficient.
So how did you get out of that choice job?
Well, I was in my 12th month, and back then you did a month or a year over there, so that's where I left from. I was there for a year and a day, and flew home, got out in Oakland, and never slept. On the way home, I stayed up and watched Hang 'em High. And Clint Eastwood movie, I believe. And anyway, I got out in Oakland and went and spent about a month in Sacramento.
Well, what was your first impression of coming back to the world?
Well, it was the clothing was different. I was a little surprised. The guys were all wearing scarves. Scarves were popular, and square-toed shoes. And I was a little out of sorts with what to buy. All I had was military clothes. I remember going downtown San Francisco and stopping a girl, asked her if she'd help me go shopping, and well, that kind of scared that girl, and I don't blame her now, but I didn't know what to do or what to buy or what to get, so eventually I went to a clothing store and they helped me buy some clothes. I went into some pretty crazy bars in San Francisco. I was a little bit shocked in nude bars. I had really never seen anything quite like that in Michigan. But and some gay bars, I just didn't know. I just happened to go into them. And then I met a girl. My brother told to see a girl he knew out there, and kind of fell in love for a few weeks, and then I came home.
You arrived in San Francisco when?
That had been November of '69.
Whoa, that was right after the Summer of Love. I actually was there in '68.
It was crazy.
It was very different.
There was, I'd call them Hare Krishnas,
Yeah, oh yeah.
walking up and down the streets, wanting me to go to chants. I'm a little bit scared. I had never witnessed anything like this. I came from a straight town in Michigan, and all the freaks and geeks were up and down the streets, and pretty weird to me.
Yeah.
And of course, I stood out.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a GI haircut and stupid clothes, and so.
Yeah, people handing out newspapers and pamphlets.
Pamphlets, yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
I had a very pretty girl come up and trying to be a prostitute, and I wasn't buying any of that, but figure of speech. But I thought, what a crazy place to live at the time.
Well, how were you treated, though?
It was all right. I really didn't do any much one-on-one with anybody until I got back home, And
Well, why were you? I know you landed in California. Was that a stopover for you to go to Michigan? Is that why you were there?
exactly, that's where we got out. That's where I got out of the service. We did all the paperwork and all the medical, the physicals, they gave us.
You didn't have malaria, or you didn't have.
Right,
Yeah, sure.
right. So we went through all that, and I was out. I mean, I went from flying from Vietnam to getting to Oakland, California, and being out. All of a sudden, you're just out. So it's pretty strange from going from, I know, a swimming pool, but it was still a combat zone, and back to the United States, where it was different. Big shock.
Gosh, I mean, some of these guys landed in different places, but to land in San Francisco in 1969, it's like science fiction.
I know, it was to me. I mean, like I said, I grew up in Fremont, small town. It's very, very Christian town, very straight town, you might say. And to get into all that was pretty nuts. But I handled it. Like I say, I was older. Then I'm 26 going on 27, so I'm older, so I can deal with it.
This is just a personal curiosity. Did you get a chance to see any of the bands that were playing? Because there's some amazing music going on.
I was walking down the streets, and a black group came out of the back door with a female, with a white female, and she says, "Would you take my pictures? These are the drifters." And so I said, "Sure." So I took a picture of her with the drifters. They were performing somewhere down there. So it was kind of cool. Yeah.
But there was a lot of, in the park and stuff, there was concerts, so you didn't get a chance to, of course, you wouldn't know.
I didn't know anything,
Yeah.
what was going on, and
Yeah.
I was a little nervous, to be honest with you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because you're talking, Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, I mean, all the music that we can.
Love to see that, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're in this whirlwind of bizarro world, so to speak.
Yeah.
When did you know where you were going next? I mean, were you going to be shipped back to Michigan, or what happened?
I wanted to just relax for a while, enjoy myself, and I did meet this girl, and I liked her a lot, and so I had quite a bit of money saved, so I just want to kind of take a vacation before I went home, and I was there for about a month, and I called my dad, and he says, "Son, I got this big sign on the house. You guys can't see it out there, but it says, 'Welcome home, Sergeant Meeuwenberg.'" He says, "After a month, I'm getting a little bit embarrassed about this sign out here, hanging out here. When you coming home?" I said, "I'll be home shortly." So my grandmother actually died when I landed, about the time I landed. And I said, and I told my mom, I says, "I got to take it easy for a while. Grandma's old and she died, and by the time I get there, it'll kind of be over with." And, so I love my grandmother, but everybody makes decisions.
Yeah, but Jerry, your family could not have known what you went through, and you needed some downtime. You needed to actually
Yeah.
breathe.
Yeah. Well, my dad probably understood that more than the rest of the family, He'd been in Germany, and so he saw his own stuff. So he probably knew. But they wanted to see me, and I understood all that.
They were happy you made it through, too.
Yeah. Actually, my dad, when I flew out of Fort Lewis, Washington to go to Vietnam, my dad had my brother drive me to the airport because he couldn't do it. Yeah, he was too emotional about it, so.
He didn't know if he'd ever see you again.
That's right. It's tough, and I got it. I got it. And when I'm sitting in a window in the airplane, and I see my brother out there, and he's wiping the tears out of his eyes. He was like almost 4 years older than me, so pretty emotional stuff.
How'd you go, huh?
No, he was older. He was born in '39, so he kind of missed all that. Yeah.
So what was the homecoming like?
Well, a lot of Budweiser and a lot of parties. We were a big partying family. They had a welcome home party for me, and 30, 40 people probably, and a lot of my friends that I knew before, Then I partied for probably a good year, pretty much. You had, for where I worked, you had 90 days to report back to your job. And at the time, I had like 4 or 5 years seniority there, so after 3 months, I reported back to work, but I kind of partied that whole time. Enjoyed myself.
I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. If you don't want to answer it, I understand. The homecoming itself, I've talked to a lot of Vietnam vets, and of course World War II vets, who just would not talk about their experiences to their family. Were there people asking you questions? Were there inappropriate questions? What was the reaction of the homecoming?
Nobody really asked me. They were probably nervous about asking me. I didn't have anything I couldn't talk about, probably because I was older when I was there. As I said before, we had people killed, we had people wounded, but I had so much work to do that I didn't have time to go see this. Probably wouldn't have done it anyhow. And nobody ever questioned me. I told them some stuff about what I did and my job, and I probably brought this stuff up a little bit, but nobody ever pressured me on it. I didn't have a dilemma about it, So I had a pretty lucky military career for By the way, when I got home, I had been in the service for 21 months. At that time, if you had 5 months or less, you got an early out. So I had like 3 months to do, so I got an automatic out. They don't want to waste their time on you, their money, so they let you out. So I had 4 trainings, MOSs, military occupational individual training, is what it was. And I had 4 different MOSs in 21 months, which is a lot. You know, I've gone through a lot of different trainings.
When you got home, were there people that didn't come back that you knew?
I lost 2 friends over there. One of them was, 2 of them were pilots. Both of them are still missing in action. One of them was Bill Stroven. The other guy's name was Ron Darling. And I went to Darling's party when he went in the service. And they never found either one of those guys. They were both pilots. And I went to the floating wall, or the traveling wall, and I scratched his name on a piece of paper like they do. Take a paper with pencil. And I have that stuck in my Harley room. But after that, his folks kind of just shriveled away, and that was pretty much the end of him. You lose a kid like that, and you never, no closure to it. So, yeah, he was probably 20, 21. You know, he went right out of, well, he went right out of college. He might have been a little older, but he wasn't too old, so.
So, before we wind this up, are there other stories or things that you wanted to talk about, that any part of this period of time?
Probably one of the good stories is when I first got out to the field, out to the artillery base, Bob Hope Show came to 25th Division. And so I was a new guy, but for some reason, nobody wanted to go to the show. And I says, put me in, coach. So I have some pictures here of the Bob Hope Show. I went to the Bob Hope Show. That would be 68, the end of 68, 69 Bob Hope Show. And to get a little farther, the Bob Hope Show, when I got to run the swimming pool, I was special services at that same base camp, 25th Division. And what we did was set up the next Bob Hope Show. So I wasn't there when he was there because I went home. But when I got to see the Bob Hope Show, like in January, I see some of the guys I knew sitting in the front row of the Bob Hope Show, which I thought wasn't right, because those seats should have been reserved for guys that came in out of the field. So I didn't think too kindly of that. So.
How was the show?
It was the 12 Gold Diggers, I believe. It was a good show. And might have been the New Christie Minstrels. I'm not quite sure, but at the time I had my going home papers, and I got up on the stage before the show went on, and I got them to sign my going home papers, autograph my papers. So
So you get Bob Hope's.
I didn't get his. And by the way, I never really thought Bob Hope was too funny. I give him all the credit in the world, but I didn't think he was funny. You know, that's just my own perspective. I think it was a generational thing.
Yeah.
So.
Any reflections on your experience?
Yeah, I'm glad I went. I understood people that didn't go. People who went to Canada, everybody has to live with their own decisions. It wasn't me. I wasn't raised that way, but everybody makes their decisions. And I believe they were pardoned by Carter, maybe. And I wasn't quite sure of that, but that's the president's thing. And so I had a lot of great experiences, met a lot of great guys. I'm still in touch with a good buddy from Texas, a good buddy from Akron. We see each other. We're on Facebook and all the rest of that stuff. So it's good stuff. Glad I did it, glad I served, and I really don't have any regrets.
From your perspective, looking at Vietnam now, the thing that strikes me, and we're similar generation, is that they want to be like us. Here they are fighting us, and then they want to be capitalists. They want to make money.
Well, you know, I don't know if my history is right on this. I'm only going by things I've heard along the way, like a lot of times we hear stuff. I heard that Ho Chi Minh wanted to align with the United States. That's what I heard. Because of France, we thumbed our nose at them, and they went communist. And so Vietnam and South Vietnam was kind of none of our business, in my opinion, like North Korea and South Korea. I say let them have it out. South Vietnam's doing fine, I believe. And so why we intervened in that, I don't know if it's a NATO thing or we had to stick our big nose into somebody else's business again, like we do too much, I think. Some of it's good, but we get involved in too many wars too soon. And the macho people, the tough guys that want to go kill people, they don't have a clue. When you got rockets and bombs going off and people are dying, it's a different story. You're not quite so tough. Pretty scary business. So when you think you're tough and you want to go kill people, friends of mine I worked with said, by God, I wish I could have gone over, we'd have done this. So you don't have a clue. You're not going to be so tough. So.
I think that's a great way to end. A great way to end.
Okay.
This was
Great.
a really amazing interview. You really have a lot of insight.
Oh, good. Good. Well, I'm older, and I was older.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you allowing me to do this. Yeah.
Well, you'll get a copy of this for DVD.
Oh, that's great.
And you'll be able to, it's public domain, so you can make as many copies as you want.
Okay.
Highly recommend that you digitize it, because the CD, you never know how long the DVD is gonna last, and so make sure you back it up.
Yeah.
But it'll be part of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Oh, that's great.
And it'll be part of Grand Valley State University.
That's even better. Yeah. Yeah. And I want to get my plot right next to the American flag at Spring Lake Cemetery. That's what I want to do.